Why don't you introduce us?
Hey everybody, welcome to our daily live stream, Wednesday, December 4th. I'm Patrick Spano, one of the two tutors on here with my buddy. You want to introduce yourself, Mr. Alex Torres,
Alex
tutor from South
Torres.
Florida, and we're here providing you with daily content right now. Past few sessions, we've been focusing on SAT practice test 1, and we are currently on the rating and language section. I think around question 5. We got through a few yesterday, and today we'll get through, I would say, probably at least half of this section, if not more. So stay tuned, and thanks for tuning in, as always.
Totally. And we've really covered a lot of good material. If for whatever reason this video is your first time seeing us, we've already done solutions for lots of SAT tests, and they're available on our YouTube page. We've already done some thematic lessons, and we have also created videos aimed at parents in terms of what you need to know to get your child properly set up in terms of getting into college and the like. So we've done quite a bit of good work already, and we're so excited to do even more to further help anyone who can be helped by this information. So we're here at your service, and if there's anything that you would like to see more of, then you can also let us know that. You can leave a comment or anything to that effect. So Patrick, before we really get started, tell me what your kind of thoughts have been on the English 101 lesson that we were doing yesterday.
Well, I think that it's pretty clear to see that there's maybe less rules than for the math section. However, the rules pertain to questions that come up very, very often. You'll get at least a few questions on, again, just a few of the topics we went over: colon, the semicolon, commas, those types of things. So you really want to make sure that if you watched yesterday, or if not, you can go back to watch the video, but you really have to know a few basic rules very well that are always tested on this part of the test. And with knowledge of these rules, I think that it's fair to say your score can increase pretty quickly. You just have to make sure that all of the one-liners and these little keys that we go over, keep on studying them, and then practice with these questions and keep them fresh in your mind as we're doing here. Obviously, you jot them out there. So that's the biggest thing that I would say. Not too many rules, but you need to know them well.
Yeah, we've got anything that's highlighted in color in one of our lessons, you want to be committing to memory. What's happening with the SAT is, if you took the pre-2016 SAT, it was an aptitude test. It was very similar to what you'd find in an IQ test. However, when they made the change and they made the SAT more like the ACT and its own funky animal as well, they moved in the direction of making it a content-based test. So this is good news for anyone who feels like they're a bad test taker, or they've always struggled, or anyone who is willing to do the work and may or may not have as many of the natural skills or natural aptitude or talent or whatever you want to call it, or maybe you just don't think you do and it's bottled up in there, but at least that fear can be appeased by the idea that this is not about talent, this is about content awareness. If I ask you how to find the vertex of a parabola, do you have something to tell me? If I ask you what to do when you see the cofunctions of a complementary angle, or if I ask you what to do when the SAT asks you whether to add or delete sentences, your knowledge of those things says nothing about how quote unquote smart you are. It tells us whether you've done the studying that you need to be doing. And that's what we're here for, is to teach you those things that you need to study. We're very confident, very excited about what we do. Our average SAT student has increased by 11 points for every hour tutored. Our average ACT student by 1/3 of an ACT point, composite point for hour tutored on average. This is considering the fact that so many kids these days just will not study. So as tutors, as internationally recognized tutors, we've had to develop our system to be able to help the student who is very ambitious, and also the majority of students who in the sort of social media age tend to just be a little more lazy. Sorry to say it, but it's true. And if you're one of those people, don't let your laziness extend to an unwillingness to memorize the little one-liners and the things you see highlighted in color here. So we'll dive right into test 1, section 2. We previously covered questions 1 through 4, and now we're starting at question 5. Question 5 is a sentence location question. So the SAT will often say, here's a sentence, where should it go? And the one-liner for this that you would want to memorize, like we were just saying, is look within and imagine. So now what is this doing? A lot of the one-liners will sound very obvious, like, oh yeah, of course I'm supposed to look within and imagine where it goes. But we're saying something more. The logical thing to do for a question like this is to look at the sentence, look at sentence 5, which I'm going to highlight in green right here, and to go ahead and just kind of immediately see where it goes. And so that's kind of shortchanging the process. We want to look within sentence 5 and spend a little extra time on sentence 5 processing it. You, the student, you make your money for processing. So it's not about going fast all the time. Speed, of course, is important, but that's not the thing. It's about you have an amount of time and an amount of energy, and you want to use that on the right thing. So looking within, spending a little extra time only on sentence 5 is going to tell us, where to, is going to tell us what we need to know to quote unquote process this and then be an expert on this question type. Patrick, do you have something to add?
No, I was going to say that's very good. And it also comes back to the theme from the reading section too. Sometimes deliberately going a little slower at certain points in the end it will actually make you faster. So same kind of thinking here. Take your time, and in the long run, you'll actually be quicker. You'll be faster, more confident when you actually need to answer the question.
Yeah, the ultimate irony on a test where, of course, speed is your advantage. It's about speed, but it's more importantly about where to slow down, where to invest your time. So you have this budget of whatever amount of minutes on one of these tests, and where am I going to invest most of that time in? That's what we're here to help you be a good judge of. So here we want to look within and imagine. So we haven't looked at any of the 4 locations yet. We've only looked at this green sentence, and we're going to imagine just based on this and based on nothing else, what would have come before it and after it. So if it's improperly introduced into the environment, acid way runoff can pollute waterways, depleting the oxygen content of streams and rivers as it decomposes. So they're starting by saying, if it's improperly introduced into the environment, here's what's going to happen. So I'm imagining before something like this, a sentence would say, disposing of it is a problem. So disposing of it is a problem. And then it would logically follow from there. If it's improperly disposed of, as if it's improperly introduced into the environment, it can cause all sorts of pollution. So, and then sometimes, you can do one of these. Sometimes it's more possible to do one than the other in terms of the before and after. But after this, I might just, using my imagination, say, it's going to pollute, and then that, here, if there's pollution, it might cause other problems on top of that. So once there's pollution, now here's what else is going to happen as a result of that, right? So we have a good, solid impression of what we think the answer should be. And the right answer is going to come to us, not the other way around. We're not diving right into answer choices before we've had any time for the most important thing, which is the processing. So we've got the before and after. Okay, now we can look through the locations and see. So one of the choices is after sentence 1. We're looking for a sentence that says disposing of it is a problem, and then the green sentence is going to follow. So the main environmental problem caused by production of Greek yogurt is a creation of acid whey as a byproduct. I mean, it kind of, if I had never seen this before, I may have liked it because it talks about acid whey, but it doesn't necessarily say disposing of it. So right now that's good, but we're looking for great. So now read sentence 2. Because it requires up to 4 times more milk than conventional yogurt does, it produces a large amount of acid whey, which is difficult to dispose of. So there it is, right? That's what we were looking for. We need to dispose of it. And that's what they said right here, difficult to dispose of. So ideally we want it after sentence 2. And so looking, is after sentence 2 an option? Yes, it is in choice C. And the answer to number 5 is indeed C. Good, good, good. So let's go to number 6. The writer is considering deleting. Okay, so another one of our classic one-liners. When you're being asked about adding and deleting a sentence. This one is based on the main idea of the paragraph as a whole. So like I said before, a lot of these one-liners seem like they're kind of reiterating things that are fairly obvious as it is. But there's nothing obvious about that, because when I'm talking main idea, I could be talking momentary main idea, which we do sometimes. The momentary main idea is going to be sort of what's happening right in this part of the passage. It could be entire passage-based main idea, which is another important one, right? So to say it's based on the paragraph is actually a big deal for us. So it's based on the paragraph. And so we've got to ask ourselves, what's the main idea of this paragraph? Just notice we're 2 questions into it. So much work needs to be done before you look at these guys. These guys are terrible at this stage in the game, because you don't want your adversary, the College Board, who's here to trick and fool you by and large. You don't want them giving you the clues and the hints that you're going to use. You want to do that on your own. So what's the main idea of this paragraph? And when we're quickly assessing main idea, we look at verbs. So we're not going to look at the part that's underlined because that part is in question. But nutritionists consider Greek yogurt to be a healthy food. It is an excellent source of calcium and protein. It serves as a digestive aid, and it contains few calories. It is slightly lower in sugar and carbohydrates. And because it is more concentrated, it contains more protein per serving, helping people stay healthy, I would imagine. And by the way, I'm going to delete this little highlighting because we are adamant that ing and to do words are not considered verbs. So to be is actually not a verb. We'll talk about that.
I noticed that. Yeah.
Did you notice that?
No, just when you said it, I was.
So, okay, so we've highlighted a lot of the verbs that are like our neon signs that tell us what's most important. So based on these verbs, what's the main idea of the paragraph now?
I would just say talking about the health benefits of
the health benefits of Greek yogurt. Yeah, you know, this article influenced me to eat more Greek yogurt for my family more often.
That's good. Thanks, College Board.
Okay, so then should this be, does this go along with the health benefits? Does A go along with the health benefits of Greek yogurt?
I think maybe it'd be nice to have a little context of what came prior, because it's mentioning these conservation methods. And I think out of context in this paragraph, they weren't talking about conservation methods.
So, okay. So here we're saying Greek yogurt causes a lot of pollution, and to deal with that issue, we figured out better ways to dispose of acid whey and different uses for it. And we're looking for additional solutions for reusing acid whey. Then it says, these conservation methods are costly and time consuming, but they're worth the effort. So it was talking about these methods. And
I would say yes.
Yeah, definitely. And the idea is, well, why are they worth the effort? They're worth the effort because, so why are they worth the effort? They're worth the effort because it's healthy. Yeah, exactly.
It's a good alternative.
Now, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's it.
Okay, so now that we know what we want this sentence here, we got to be really careful about the verbiage, because they said we should add it. Should we delete it? So yes, we should add it. No, we shouldn't delete it. That can be confusing. So in a rush, we might pick yes here, thinking that yes, it's valuable. And that's what the SAT, in my opinion, is trying to do to you on purpose. But no, we should not delete it because we are keeping it. And do we want to keep it, not delete it, because it continues the explanation of how acid whey can be disposed of safely, or because it sets up the argument in the paragraph for the benefits of Greek yogurt? What would you say?
I would say not C. That's not being done.
Now, look how powerful this is. We answered without preparing for this, and we said it was the health benefits of Greek yogurt, and look what they said, the benefits of Greek yogurt. So it's that amazing. You know, when you're following a lot of these methods, this just starts to click. It may not click right away for everyone, but it does come together fast. And, you know, the comment we hear from a lot of students is, man, I don't know how I was supposed to do this before, because now I have all this information that is going to guide me as I do everything. So let's look at number 7 now. We were actually talking about to-do words should not be used as verbs, and number 7 is talking about the word to be, or the phrase to be. So what I'd like to point out about number 7 is that it says it is a source of calcium and protein. It serves as a digestive aid, and it contains few calories. So we're talking about parallelism in lists. And we have a list here. And if we stick with serves as, now when I said serves as, I was kind of doing that just based on what sounded right to me without looking at the answer choices, but there's an answer choice that does that. So it is a source of calcium and protein, serves as a digestive aid, and contains few calories. So parallelism is the idea that if we have a list, we want to say the same things the same way in a list. So I'm like running, biking, and jogging, or I like to run, to bike, and to jog, but I don't want to mix and match the two. Anything to add there, Patrick?
I think that's a very good point. Again, one of those topics or things you need to know that maybe outside of the context of this test may not be wrong at school. However, on the test, we know we have to go by the rules. We have to play by the College Board's rules, and parallelism in lists, as you mentioned, is a rule. So
yeah, and getting to know this test is like getting to know a person. So, if you have a best friend or a spouse, you're going to know what their tendencies are. And so if our spouse here is the College Board, we know that they are big on parallelism in lists. And so if it's if it's a debate between this and something else, I might prioritize this because I know it's one of the things that's important, to our spouse of the College Board.
So you're saying that we should marry the College Board, or are you advocating?
That could be a subject of another podcast, I guess, right? Okay, so did I tell you yesterday? I forget whether I told you. I was a high school teacher, and I was voted corniest. Corniest joke teller of all the teachers. So I'm very proud of that.
At least you got an award.
Yeah, I was recognized for something. So number 8. It's the same parallelism. It's the same parallelism. It's interesting that 7 and 8 are both about parallelism because, it is an excellent source of calcium and protein, serves as a digestive aid, and contains. So the idea is that the it was given to us early on. And so therefore, we're not going to be repeating it because in this list, it's not repeated. It is this, serves as that, and contains this. So I might even have repeated the it myself when I was saying it, but the idea is that the it was already given once and then the list came after that. So we're not going to start over by saying it contains. So, all right, so that's number 8. And okay, so now coming over to number 9, words like therefore, for instance, furthermore, however, all these words, these are transition words. And when we have transition words, what you want to do is you want to invent your own. What this does is it forces you to understand what you're reading. Now, so many of these just sound obvious, like, oh yeah, of course I need to understand what I'm reading, but it's not that obvious because if I'm reading this and quickly trying to determine whether to put in answer choices A, B, C, or D, I'm actually losing out on the comprehension there because I may or may not have comprehended it. I'm already trying to figure out which answer is best. So we're all about step 1, step 2, and step 3, and some of these important steps can't be sidestepped. So it has all these benefits here that we've been discussing in our parallelism questions on 7 and 8. So it's a digestive aid, has few calories, it's lower in sugar and carbs. And then later they say it has more protein per serving. So what transition word would you invent right there for that situation?
Try not to look at not to be skewed.
It's hard. It's very hard. Yeah. We sympathize with that. It's like staring you in the face and you're supposed to not look at it. How terrible is life, right? But
I would say in addition.
Yeah, in addition. Like, in other words, we gave you some of the benefits, and now we're adding on another benefit. So by the way, in addition, that includes words like however, that includes words like moreover and furthermore, which basically mean in addition. So what answer does that take us to? In addition.
A.
Also, Yeah, so now in other words means I'm restating the same thing in different words, which are not, we're giving a new idea. Therefore, choice C is for cause and effect. This happened because that happened. There's like a sequence there. That's not what's happening. And for instance is like, for example, I'm giving an example of something I said earlier, which is also not happening. So we're picking A for number 9. Now going on to number 10. I'm going to go ahead and maybe clip in the previous part so we can see the whole continuum here. That takes a sec. Okay.
Good keyboard work.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Work on it every day, all day. All right. So because it's more concentrated, Greek yogurt contains more protein per serving, thereby helping people stay satiated for longer periods of time. So we're here talking about word choice, and word choice comes down to 90% of the time, it's based on the actual definitions of the words. Also, maybe 10% of the time, in our opinion, generally speaking, it's about how formal. The SAT always wants more formal because this is professional. This is getting ready for college. It's not like hanging out with your friends. It's not casual. So just thinking about the definitions of the words here, because none of them look overly casual. Sufficient means like enough. Complacent means it's almost like being depressed or something, right? Like you're not interested in improving.
Kind of apathetic. Yeah.
So apathetic, not wanting to improve. And fulfilled would be, fulfilled is like really deep. Like, are you fulfilled with your life, right? Which we're just talking about food here. So it's maybe kind of just a wrong context. It's not philosophy or anything like that. And satiated, if anyone needs help with that vocab, is a word that's used for food. Satiated means satisfied with regard to food. And that's what we're talking about. Greek yogurt has more protein, which makes you satisfied from a food perspective. So now we're going to number 11, because actually, let me just fulfill my promise to always highlight things that we want people memorizing. Okay, and number 11, because consumers reap the nutritional benefits of Greek yogurt and support those who make and sell it, farmers and businesses should continue finding safe and effective methods of producing the food. Okay, so I might consider this to be a conjunction pair. You know, conjunction pairs are words like, you know, either or. They're structures of sentences that, you know, you fit the words around. So either this or that, neither this nor that. And in previous sessions, we've talked about some of the harder ones, not only, but also. So not only am I the president, but I am also the client. If anyone really old gets that reference. And then another one is not but. It was not this, but that led to the issue. So here we're starting with the word because, and just think about situations where you'd use because. You usually would say, because this happens, this other thing happens. Like in other words, the word because does not get followed by a second sort of structural word, by a second conjunction. So therefore is going to be terrible there. And so is going to also be terrible. And so because consumers reap the nutritional benefits of Greek yogurt and support those who make and sell it, farmers and businesses should do this. So because one thing happens, the other thing happens without any other second structural word there. This is a wonderful time to emphasize the definition of when to use the colon. For the colon, the first part is an independent clause, and the second part is anything that describes the first part. That is an absolutely essential one-liner for you to remember. And we also had an important discussion of conjunction pairs and what they are. There are, of course, more, but once you tell yourself it's a conjunction pair, it helps you. So anyway, so actually as a general rule, when we have special punctuation, we want to judge that first. So I would have wanted to go to choice D first and say, is the first part an independent clause? Is it right here, Patrick?
I think it's pretty clear to see that it's dependent with the word because.
Yeah, it has the word because, and that's our definition of a dependent clause, is an independent clause with an annoying word in the front. So yeah, the first part is not independent. which is why the colon does not work in that situation.
Which takes the comma. As we saw, the basic structure went over last time was dependent, comma, independent. One of the basic
in our English 101, there are 4 basic sentence types. Very good. Okay, so Patrick, I'm going to have you do some of the initial reading as we get to every question, just kind of reading the little area and introducing it to us, sort of balance it out a little bit. So go ahead, 12.
All right, so dark snow, most of Greenland's interior is covered by a thick layer of ice and compressed snow, known as the Greenland ice sheet. The size of the ice sheet fluctuates seasonally. In summer, average daily high temperatures in Greenland can rise to slightly above 50 degrees Fahrenheit, partially melting the ice. In the winter, the sheet thickens as additional snow falls, and average daily low temperatures can drop to as low as 20 degrees.
Okay, so then the question here is saying that we need to represent accurately and effectively the information in the graph. So on my first read, it doesn't look like they're saying which of them supports the main idea of the paragraph the most or anything like that. They're just saying which one is accurate to what we see in the graph. So let's see, in summer, this happens. So we're looking for in summer, the temperature drops as low as 20 degrees, right?
Yep, I believe so. Or the next part is winter. The winter, the sheet thickens. Yeah, so we get the high before for summer, and now they're transitioning to the winter, what the low can be.
Okay, so now just to sort of highlight some of the important parts. So like you said, in the winter, the average daily low temperature can go to 20 degrees. So when we look at the chart, we've got the average daily high and the low.
Correct.
So we're looking at this line right here. And is the average daily low dropping to as low as 20 degrees?
It goes as low as 20, however, it goes lower. As we can see, between February and March, gets to about 12 degrees.
It goes to 12 degrees Fahrenheit, which is why we're going to want to choose choice B here. So for number 12, we're choosing B.
Which is what temperature in Celsius? Kidding.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's what I was thinking about as I was doing it as well.
That's what I thought you were going to
ask. Yeah. And those are the little things, no question about it. The devil's in the details. Some people just, no matter what, will never master the idea of being so detail oriented under pressure as the SAT forces you to be, which is why one of the good reasons to turn over to the ACT, because it's just a tiny bit less demanding in that regard, but still very demanding overall.
The College Board is not that cruel, only slightly cruel, if we can get away with saying that.
I'll leave that one alone. I'll reserve my true opinion. Okay, so number 13.
Typically begins to show evidence of thawing in late summer. This follows several weeks of higher temperatures.
Okay, now effectively combining. Welcome to the world of our most annoying one-liner. Effectively combining. The thing about the effectively combining, how to effectively combine two sentences, is that there's a lot of different things that they can ask you about, and we don't know which one this particular question is focused on. So you want to have your own list and just go ahead and cross-reference against what you are looking for and see which of those things they're doing here. So number 1, we want to read it fast, looking for flow. Now, by the way, when I talk about flow, I'm also including in that over wordiness. Something's overly wordy or repetitive, then we don't want to do it, but wordiness is part of flow. We don't want to have bad transitions. We want good transitions. So that would be transitional words like however, furthermore, moreover, so and so on. And also transitional punctuation like colon, semicolon, long dash. We also want to have good word order. So this is very much more rare, but occasionally the right words will all be there in the wrong order and it'll create the wrong emphasis. And last but not least, but by far most important, I'll put it in all caps, we want to avoid restarting. So restarting, we don't want to repeat, but restarting is different than repeating. Restarting is where we're restarting our idea in a situation where it would have been a lot smoother to just continue talking about this thing as part of the same idea. So, the example I always give is it's kind of the way a third grader would write. So a third grader might say, "School is fun. It is my favorite place." So we're going to see a lot of that. That's the most common one that'll come up in this regard. So we need to effectively combine looking at, let's say, choice B. If you read it with choice B in place, the ice sheet begins to show evidence of thawing, and this thawing follows. So that's repetitiveness and restarting. It's just like starting the idea over. And I could say, the way they said it initially was nice. It has this thawing in late summer. My instinct is to just go straight for A. It has this thawing in late summer following several weeks of high temperatures. Like, that's the way I think instinctively a lot of good writers would just want to do it, and then notice that A actually matches that. But just to continue the theme of restarting, looking at choice C, it follows weeks of, or shows evidence of thawing, and such thawing follows. Or looking at D, so that's our restarting, and looking at D, it shows evidence of thawing and this evidence. So now we're sort of repeating, instead of repeating the thawing, we're repeating the evidence. So we actually have even worse than restarting, is just literally repeating things that don't need to be repeated. And the one that doesn't do that is choice A. So just very liberating, if you ask me, just compared to, students who have already tried to teach the SAT to themselves and are realizing how hard that is, to have these rules and know, okay, every time I get to this question, I got 4 things I'm going to look out for. And in going through all those 4, I can start narrowing out different answer choices. Is very liberating for someone who maybe thought of this question type as a dead end in the past.
I would also like to ask too, so I know that we've talked about it before, shortness, right? Shorter answers. Sometimes that's a good spot to start. Would you agree that with these types of questions also, starting looking at the shortest one, making sure it includes all of the points here is a good spot to start? Or what would you say for these questions?
Well, it's one of the 4 things that we mentioned, because when we talked about flow, we also say that conciseness is a part of flow. And this comes from the ACT. I kind of believe that the SAT kind of took this from the ACT bag of tricks. But yeah, if I can say all the same things in less words and without adding anything critical, I'm now going to say the same thing in more words, then these tests both very firmly believe that we want to do it with less words. We want to be concise. We want to get a lot of economy out of every word that we use. Very good.
So on these tests, shorter is in fact better, if all the things you mentioned.
As long as you're not missing anything critical,
Correct.
As long as there's not, any egregious, oversights. So let's go ahead and go to number 14 now.
For example, in the summer of 2012, virtually the entire Greenland ice sheet underwent thawing at or near its surface by mid-July, the earliest date on record.
Alrighty. So this is another question on transition words. And we just mentioned a little while ago, when you're doing transition words, you want to invent your own. And what it does is it forces you to truly read it. Sometimes we feel like we're reading it, but we're actually so busy doing so many balancing, juggling, doing so many things at once. So we have the ice sheet showing evidence of thawing in late summer following several weeks of high temperatures. Then in the summer of 2012, it did its thawing by mid-July. So, I might also emphasize here the need to read fast. We want to read fast and carelessly. And this is a great example of why we'd want to do that, because here we're showing evidence of thawing in late summer. And then later they're saying the thawing happened by mid-July. So what the SAT is expecting us to notice is that that's not late. This is midsummer. Mid-July is midsummer, and this is late summer. And so they don't agree. So what we're looking for in our own words is kind of like a but. Although it typically happens in late summer, it typically happens in late summer, but in 2012, it happened in midsummer. So that's a very high level difficult. I'm not 100% sure that in a real live SAT, I would have the detail to be able to notice that. What about you? What do you think? Would you catch that, Patrick?
I think it's a small detail, but I think that if we read after it says the earliest date, that might be a little trigger if you were just reading, but you weren't really paying very careful attention to the difference between late summer, mid-July, them kind of punctuating that sentence with this is the earliest date on record. Maybe that should make you stop and think, okay, they told us what was typical at the beginning, and now we have this record setting kind of summer, maybe that could be a little more information to help let the light bulb go off that maybe something is contrary to what was typical, which they described in the first sentence.
Yeah,
Perhaps.
absolutely. And that's really, really helpful there. And also, just to emphasize again, the reading fast, like if I'm going too slow, then it'll take me so long to process the idea of it was thawing in late summer. This follows several weeks of higher temperatures in the summer of 2012. You see what I'm saying? If I'm going at that speed, we have this unconscious thing that says that when we're working hard, we go slower because it means that I'm not going fast and being careless, like maybe in grade school we were taught. So by doing what feels like the right thing to do, you could kind of screw yourself up on a question like this.
Which is a very good point, because I think that many tutors and prep books, they emphasize read very carefully, which implies that you maybe read not so fast, to read carefully, to absorb everything. But as we've proven, the opposite is actually much more helpful.
Yeah, and are we telling you in one moment to go slow and another moment to go fast? Absolutely we are. Are we hypocritical? Absolutely we are. But this is one of the reasons why I love being an SAT, ACT test prep tutor, because we're leaving you more college ready, because we're helping you to develop judgment. That's the thing that's going to help you really succeed in college, is knowing when to be friendly, when to be standoffish, when to speed up, when to slow down, and developing that nuanced approach that is a little more complex, and you can do it. If you're doubting yourself and you hear that, don't doubt yourself. You can do this. Okay, so looking now at number 15, go ahead, Patrick.
Jump ahead, but Jason Box, an associate professor of geology at Ohio State, believes that another factor added to the early thaw, the dark snow problem.
Okay, so on this one, I might say fix it on your own first, because it's pure grammar here. It's not main idea or anything like that. Fix it on your own. If I'm fixing this on my own, I would say Jason Box, an associate professor of geology at Ohio State, believes that another factor added to the early thaw. So this is what we call a modifier. Technically speaking, a modifier is a clause that's missing the subject, the verb, or both. But even more important than that, it's a middle modifier. And the test prep companies love talking that way. So you want to be really comfortable with the idea of a little timeout in the sentence where we add some extra information. But LeBron James, arguably one of the best basketball players of all time, acted in whatever movie he acted in, right? So you want to be comfortable sort of with that little aside in the middle of a sentence. And which answer choice delineates that with the proper commas?
See?
Jason Box, an associate professor of geology at Ohio State, believes that another factor added to the early thaw. Perfect. So number 15 is C. Very nice. And now we're going over to number 16. Okay, so now we have our special punctuation, and we want to kind of reiterate the rules for these. These are rules that absolutely should be memorized. For the colon, the first part is an independent clause, and the second part is anything that describes the first part. For the semicolon, it separates two independent clauses. And for the long dash, one of them is a colon, counts as a colon, and two of them counts as a set of parentheses. So those are our rules. And when you get special punctuation, I mentioned it a little earlier, you want to judge your special punctuation first. So we could go to the colon, say, is this a good colon? Go to the semicolon, is this a good semicolon? And little by little, we'll be narrowing out all of the wrong answer choices. So does A fit according to the semicolon definition?
No.
Why?
Not. Because the dark snow problem is not an independent clause.
The second part is not independent. And for the semicolon, you need two independent clauses. Good. And what about choice B?
I believe it's the same problem, if I see the punctuation correctly.
Okay, choice B. So the second part is not independent in B either. And what about choice C?
So colon So what comes before needs to be an independent clause. But Jason Box, an associate professor of geology at Ohio State, believes another factor added to the early thaw. Independent clause. That works. And then what would come after in that case? The dark snow problem, describing what factor added to the early thaw. So that seems to respect both rules.
Yeah, it describes the factor that they mentioned before. Perfect. So we have the first part independent. The second part is describing what they talked about, which is the factor. For D, it kind of follows the same rule, but the part after the colon just doesn't make sense, right? It's nonsensical. Being, this is almost a throwback to the old SAT. Being and having are kind of thrown in as sort of often, not always, no, nothing is always, but they're often throwaway wrong answers. So I might even say behind the scenes, whoever wrote this problem has been with the company from the old SAT, where it's like, when in doubt, just put the word being or having in a wrong answer choice.
That's a good inside scoop there. Not available on any other test prep YouTube channel, so you got to be tuned in here.
We're way too into this stuff, Patrick. We need a hobby. So another thing I wanted to mention, well, first of all, they're breaking grammar rules here. And if they're breaking a grammar rule in a way that's not up to us to fix, then so be it. Nothing's perfect, right? Because you don't start a sentence with but, as far as I know. But like, what are we going to sort of regard
this
as?
A sentence with but.
Thanks.
I'm just gonna get turned into a meme
with friends like you. Yeah, well, that's the thing, though. That's exactly what we're getting at here. Like, for instance, with run-on sentences, it's perfectly okay for some things that are technically wrong to be used when you're in a casual environment. But that's the judgment that we're learning is in the formal environment. You don't do it. So Jason Box believes that another factor added to the early thaw. So when we say that the first part is an independent clause and the second part is anything that describes the first part, it's okay for the independent clause to have a modifier in it, right? Like we already called it a middle modifier right here in red, because a modifier, the whole purpose of a modifier is that if it's deleted, it's okay. So functionally, we're kind of reading the sentence as if the green part didn't exist, and it's not going to interfere with our definition of the colon. If anyone is kind of being a little technical and saying, well, the first part wasn't an independent clause because it had that green part in it. Well, yeah, but that's grammatically considered invisible. So moving on now to number 17. And how much time do we have left, Patrick?
Well, we still got a little time.
Okay,
be able to get through these ones.
You let me know, okay?
No worries.
Don't want to make you late like I did yesterday. Okay, number 17.
That's right. So according to Box, a leading Greenland expert, tundra fires in 2012 from as far away as North America produced great amounts of soot. Some of it drifted over Greenland in giant plumes of smoke and then fell as particles onto the ice sheet.
So as Patrick was reading out loud there, we had this egregious run-on sentence. Tundra fires produce great amounts of soot. That's a sentence. Some of that soot drifted over Greenland. That's another sentence. So a run-on, or what some people will call a comma splice, is two independent clauses with a comma between. I might also say this is one where it would be okay to want to fix it on your own first, so that we have a really good idea of what we're looking for. So if I fix it on my own, it just sounds so good to say the fires from as far away as North America produced great amounts of soot, some of which drifted over Greenland in giant plumes of smoke. So, C is the answer here. And it's kind of a known phrase as well. One of the ways in which, college entrance exams can be a little biased is, maybe you're too young to have heard that phrase too many times so far. And so it's a little biased against you. But we're firm believers that even if English is your second language, or if there are a couple of known phrases that you personally don't know, there's so many things to know that are going to boost your score. A 1600 would be great, but a lot of us can achieve our goals even if we don't get a 1600 on the SAT, which, way less than 1% of the students actually achieve. Off the top of my head, I might say it's 1% of 1% or something like that.
Yeah, I think, less than 0.5%, I would say.
Yeah, something like that. So going over to number 18 now, some of which drifted over Greenland in giant plumes of smoke and then fell. So I believe here we're talking about tense consistency, because we're talking about something that drifted in the past tense and therefore fell in the past tense. So will fall is in the future, falls is in the present. In the present, had fallen is a whole separate thing, and we can do a little quick lesson on that. There are two reasons for using the words have, has, and had. One of them is when there are two events in the past, and the older of the two event gets the word had. So, for instance, I was upset that I hit my head because I had just reminded myself to bend down. So sometimes there's another word that indicates what happened first, so you don't really need this. But if there is no other word telling us which of the two events both in the past happened first, then the word had tells us. So the word had here says, first I reminded myself to bend down because that had happened first, and then I hit my head. So that's one reason. So if you're looking at D and you're like, okay, that all sounds good, but how do I know it wasn't D? Well, these are the two reasons why you would randomly throw in the words have, has, and had. And if one of these two reasons is not taking place, then you don't need it. The other one is when something started in the past and is still going on. So I might here say myself, I have been an SAT, ACT tutor for 10 years. Or actually, let me change it a little. I might say I ice skated for 10 years versus I have ice skated for 10 years. And what's the difference between them?
Well, the first one, you no longer ice skate, I would assume.
Yeah, because it's purely in the past tense. But
Correct.
if I say I have been ice skating, I have ice skated, then that signifies that I started 10 years ago, but I am still ice skating.
You come skate with me.
There you go. There you go. Go get beat up on the hockey rink. Looking forward to it. I'm so tough. So two reasons for have, has, and had. That's not one of the most common things that comes up, but it does come up. It is useful to know, particularly if you're a high achieving student, really, really trying to do your absolute best on the SAT. So now we're looking at number 19. We're talking about apostrophes here. And Jaden, should we just give him some stake in the company or something? He's like our one loyal follower at this early stage in the game for us. So Jaden, we appreciate it, buddy. Shout out to Jaden. But Jaden was asking me about apostrophes for possessives. And what is a possessive? Okay, so what is a possessive? A possessive is when something belongs to the thing. So I might have a friend and my friend has a boat. So why am I using the apostrophe? Because something belongs to my friend. My friend is a possessive word. The boat belongs to my friend. But we could also have multiple friends, and those friends are such good buddies with each other that they all came together and bought a boat together. So if it's a plural possessive, there's a boat, but it belongs to my group of friends. So in that situation, I have my friends' boat, which is the idea that there are multiple friends, and the apostrophe goes after. So the little shortcut in terms of plural and possessive, plural and singular possessives, is to look at the word before the apostrophe. So here we have the singular word before the apostrophe, and here we have the plural word before the apostrophe, saying does something belong to that single friend, or does something belong to that plural friend? So Jaden, our diehard follower who's gonna do amazing on the SAT because he's following all our videos. If this doesn't adequately answer your question, go ahead and let us know. We'll be more than happy to answer it for you again. But the reason we're going over apostrophes here is because of the it apostrophe S in number 19. So when we're talking about the word it, we have kind of a an exception to the rule, because it apostrophe S is reserved for not the possessive, but the abbreviation. It's reserved for it is. So I can't be, in the English language, it can't be used for it is, and also for when something belongs to it. So when something belongs to something that's being referred to as it, then we use no apostrophe in that one situation. So the possessive form of the word it has no apostrophe, and it's one of the only words that does that. So that might be kind of what they're asking us about here. There's a lot going on question 19. So if you're a little confused and distracted by all of our side conversations, we apologize. But there's a lot going on here. There's something else that's really important that must be mentioned here, which is the idea that, let's see. Scientists have long known that soot particles facilitate melting by darkening snow and ice, limiting its ability. There's this other idea that we're going to be talking about in a little while. I was kind of thinking that it'd be a good time to talk about it now, but when I'm looking at the question at second glance, it looks like it might be better for later. For people who are following along really closely, that idea that we're going to talk about later is strings of nouns joined by prepositions. So for instance, the keys on the table of my cousins in college are gold. And we'll talk about, how that works later. But just on this question, to make it a little simpler, it's kind of just being really confusing about what is the it that they're referring to. So is it the sciences? Is it the soot particles? Is it the snow and ice? And you may have to think semantically. Semantics are when you're thinking about the meaning as opposed to the grammar. So what is the thing that would have been reflecting the sun's rays originally? And what would have been reflecting the sun's rays here, Patrick?
The snow and the ice.
Yeah, so the snow and the ice are being darkened, and therefore the snow and the ice cannot reflect the sun's rays anymore. So now that we took our time to really define that the snow and the ice are the things that are acting here, we're going to go ahead and say D, because it's two items, and two items are plural, so it's there. So the answer to number 19 should be D. So that's a little complicated there, right? One of our first really complicated questions in this section. And we can just go ahead and move on to number 20 now. So here we have directions, and when we have directions, we want to follow them. Sounds a little obvious, but with so many other things on our minds, the directions might be the first thing that goes out the window. So here they're asking us about the description of a self-reinforcing cycle. So the description of a self-reinforcing cycle, and we want to complete that description. So what they're asking us to do is to kind of identify the cycle and where it comes from here. So according to Box, tundra fires produced great amounts of soot, some of which drifted over Greenland in giant plumes of smoke and fell as particles onto the ice sheet. Scientists had long known that soot particles facilitate melting by darkening snow and ice, limiting their ability to reflect the sun's rays. As Box explains, soot is an extremely powerful light absorber. It settles over ice and captures the sun's heat. The result is a self-reinforcing cycle. So we don't have to think too much about like what is the cycle here. Like they're kind of openly telling us where the cycle starts. The result is this cycle right here. The ice melts, the stuff becomes exposed. Because of the color issues, it absorbs more heat. And if we're starting the cycle, we're starting it with the very first thing in the cycle, which is the first thing right here as the ice melts. So if we want to complete the cycle, like what is a cycle? It's something that as it goes around, it cycles right back to the beginning. So for the idea of the cycle, we're going to want the first idea, which is the ice melting. So that's D. It leads to additional melting. Excuse me. Anything to add there, Patrick?
Very well explained.
Thanks, brother.
And so, yeah, I think that'll be it for me today. I don't know if we want to wrap it up there for today's session.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So, we're working hard to go ahead and add more of these videos where Patrick and I are explaining, and we're also working to create more formalized videos that are just giving the explanation without all of our banter about beating people up on the hockey rink and so on. But anyway, thanks so much for joining us. And we hope to see you soon. Tell all of your friends and family, anyone who's praying for an SAT, that we've got this nice free SAT podcast going on every weekday at 12 noon Eastern time. Thanks so much.
See you guys tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.